We don't serve people like you, so get out of my shop or I will call the security.
Look at him, he completely lost it.
Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Also, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more interesting stories about injustice and prejudice. The morning light poured softly through the tall windows of Harper & Sons Bistro, a polished midtown restaurant with brass lights and neatly folded napkins on every table. The smell of roasted coffee hung in the air, thick and rich, mixing with the faint hum of jazz from the speakers. At the counter stood Greg Harper, 38, white, tall, clean-cut, with slicked-back blonde hair and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He'd managed the bistro for 7 years, inheriting it from his father, a local legend in the restaurant business. Greg liked things a certain way. The customers, the music, the dress code, all had to fit the image he believed made the place respectable. Across from him, Emily Harris, 22, white, the hostess, stood at the podium, greeting the early lunch crowd with polite warmth. She was kind, soft-spoken, and knew enough to still believe fairness always wins if you stay quiet. Behind the counter, Trevon Parks, 26, black, wiped glasses and stacked plates. He kept his head down, but his eyes caught everything. He'd learned long ago that in places like this, silence was sometimes the only shield that worked. It was 11:47 a.m. when she walked in. Maya Bennett, 34, black, stepped through the door with quiet confidence. Her tailored navy suit was crisp, her posture poised. The kind of woman who didn't need to announce authority. She carried it naturally. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her eyes focused but kind. In one hand, she held her phone. In the other, a sleek black folder embossed with silver letters, Harper Holdings. Emily looked up, smiling. "Good morning, ma'am. Table for one?" "Yes," Maya replied with a soft, professional tone. "Reservation under Bennett." Emily turned to the computer screen, scrolling. "Bennett, I don't see it here. Let me check with the manager." She turned to Greg. "There's a Miss Bennett here. Says she has a reservation for lunch." Greg didn't even look up at first. "Tell her we're full." Emily frowned slightly. "But sir," he raised a hand. "Just tell her that. We're booked until 2. Emily hesitated, glancing toward the dining area. Nearly half the tables were empty. Greg finally looked up, and when he saw Maya, his smile flickered, polite, forced. His eyes took her in from head to toe. The subtle tension in his jaw revealed what his words didn't. He walked over, voice wrapped in fake courtesy. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We're completely booked right now. Maybe try the diner down the block. Great food, a bit more casual." Maya's expression didn't change. She'd heard that tone before, 100 times. The one that said, "You don't belong here," without ever saying the words. She smiled slightly. "That's all right. I'll wait for a table to open." Greg's polite facade cracked just enough to reveal his irritation. "It might be a long wait. I don't mind waiting," Maya said evenly, her voice calm but firm. Greg shifted uncomfortably. "It's just, this is a business restaurant. We have a certain dress code, and—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning lingered in the air like a bad smell. Emily looked down, pretending to fix a napkin. Trevon, behind the counter, froze mid-polish. Maya's eyes softened, not with weakness, but with understanding. The kind of understanding born from too many similar encounters. She turned toward the window and took a seat on the bench by the entrance. Calm, unbothered, but inside, a familiar heat burned behind her chest. Minutes passed. A group of 3 white men in suits entered the restaurant, laughing loudly. Greg's entire demeanor changed. His face lit up with fake charm. "Gentlemen, welcome back," he said. "We've got your table ready." Emily glanced at him, confused. She whispered, "But you said we were full." Greg cut her off under his breath. "That's Mr. Dunn and his partners. Don't argue." Frank Dunn, 52, white, the oldest of the men, nodded approvingly. "Good to see you, Greg. Always a pleasure." Greg led them straight to one of the best tables by the window, the very one Maya could see from where she sat. As Frank passed, he gave Maya a quick glance, then looked away dismissively. One of the men snickered quietly. Greg returned to the counter, pretending not to notice Maya watching. Emily bit her lip, heart racing. She leaned toward Greg and whispered, "Sir, this doesn't feel right." Greg didn't even look at her. "You're new here. You'll understand how things work soon enough." "How things work?" she asked softly. Greg sighed impatiently. "Look, people like her aren't exactly our usual crowd. I don't want anyone uncomfortable. We have a brand to maintain." Emily's stomach tightened. The words hung heavy, ugly. Trevin, polishing a glass nearby, couldn't hold it in anymore. His voice was low but steady. "You mean a brand that doesn't include people like us?" Greg turned, glaring. "Watch your tone, Trevin. You're lucky to have a job here." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through air. Trevin looked down again, biting back his anger. He'd seen this before, and every time, speaking up cost someone their paycheck. But Maya had heard everything. She stood, calm as ever, and walked to the counter. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Harper," she said quietly. Greg forced a smile. "Ma'am, please, if you could just come back another day, we'd be happy to—" Maya raised her hand slightly. "That won't be necessary." She reached into her bag, pulled out a small leather card case, and placed a silver business card on the counter. Greg glanced at it, then froze. The embossed text gleamed under the light. Maya Bennett, Regional CEO, Harper Holdings Group. His mouth went dry. The air seemed to disappear from the room. Emily's eyes widened. Trevon's hand froze mid-motion. Even Frank Dunn, at the window, looked up in surprise. Maya's voice was calm, controlled, almost gentle. "I came here today because Harper & Sons Bistro is part of my company," she said softly. "I wanted to see how things were being managed at the local level." Greg's lips parted, no sound coming out. "But it seems," Maya continued, "I've already learned everything I needed to know." She turned toward Emily and Trevon, offering a faint smile. "Thank you both. You handled yourselves with grace." Then she faced Greg again. Her eyes met his, steady, unreadable. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said, "with my team." And with that, she turned and walked out. The bell above the door jingled as it closed. For a few seconds, no one moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Greg stood frozen, still staring at the card on the counter, his reflection trembling in the polished metal. Emily looked at him. "You really messed up, sir." Trevon let out a quiet laugh, not of amusement, but disbelief. "Man, you have no idea who you just disrespected." Greg swallowed hard, staring at the door where Maya had disappeared. For the first time in years, the confidence drained from his face. Outside, Maya walked slowly toward her car. The rain had stopped, but the ground still shimmered under the gray sky. She stood by her door for a moment, breathing in the quiet. Not victory, not satisfaction, just the deep old ache that came every time she was reminded. Even with all her success, the fight never really stopped. Then she got into her car, started the engine, and drove away. Tomorrow would be a long day, But for once, it wouldn't be her turn to explain. The morning came heavy with clouds, the kind that seemed to swallow the sun whole. A thin drizzle clung to the street outside Harper & Son's bistro, blurring the reflections of passing cars in puddles of silver water. Inside, the restaurant was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that follows a storm before the next one begins. Greg Harper stood behind the counter, staring at the spotless marble surface like it could give him answers. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red, his nerves raw. The memory of the previous day looped in his head. The confident woman in the navy suit. The card that had turned his stomach to stone. He'd told himself it was a misunderstanding. He'd told himself he hadn't meant anything by it. But deep down, he knew the truth. He'd seen her walk in, and something inside him had decided she didn't belong. Now, she owned his tomorrow. The bistro opened at 10 o'clock a.m. sharp. Emily Harris, the hostess, arrived early. She noticed immediately that Greg wasn't his usual self. No smug grin. No sharp orders barked across the room. Just tension. He had rearranged the flower vases 3 times already, and was now pacing by the windows, glancing out every few minutes. "You expecting someone?" Emily asked carefully. He looked at her like a man caught doing something wrong. "No, I just want everything to be perfect today." Emily's eyes softened. "You mean after yesterday?" Greg stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." She sighed. "Sir, you told a customer, a professional woman, to eat somewhere else because you thought she didn't fit your crowd. That's not just a misunderstanding." Greg's jaw tightened. "I said what I said because I care about this place. The image matters. My father built this restaurant from nothing. And now you're destroying it." She cut in, quietly. Greg turned away, pretending he didn't hear her. But her words hit deep, right where guilt had already begun to dig. By noon, Trevin Parks was restocking glasses at the bar, pretending not to notice Greg's restlessness. The rain had picked up again outside, streaking down the windows like thin gray lines. The front door opened, and the soft chime of the bell sliced through the quiet. Everyone looked up. Maya Bennett stepped inside. She wore the same calm expression as yesterday, but her presence filled the room differently now. Purposeful. Grounded. Her navy suit was pressed, her stride deliberate. Behind her followed 3 corporate associates, a man and 2 women, each carrying leather folders and tablets embossed with Harper Holdings' corporate audit division. Emily swallowed hard. Trevin straightened his posture. Greg froze completely. Maya offered a polite nod to Emily. "Good afternoon. We'll need a quiet space to conduct a site evaluation and some staff interviews." Her tone wasn't hostile, but it left no room for refusal. Emily quickly guided them to a large corner table. "Of course, ma'am. Whatever you need." Greg hesitated behind the counter, clutching a towel like a lifeline. He forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Ms. Bennett, I didn't expect you so soon." Maya met his gaze evenly. "I said I'd be back today. I don't believe in wasting time." For the next 15 minutes, her team moved through the restaurant, checking ledgers, speaking with employees, reviewing inventory, and quietly noting details on tablets. Greg tried to stay composed, but his every move betrayed unease. He adjusted menus, wiped surfaces already clean, straightened chairs. When Maya finally approached the counter, the room fell into an almost reverent silence. "Mr. Harper," she began softly, "may we speak?" Greg nodded nervously. "Of course, ma'am. Please, right here is fine." She leaned lightly against the counter, her folder in hand. "Yesterday, you refused to seat me." He exhaled sharply. desperate to control the narrative. It was a mix-up. The reservation system. She interrupted gently. Half your tables were empty. He blinked, caught off guard. You also told me there was a certain dress code, Maya continued. Tell me, what part of my appearance made me unfit for your restaurant? Greg's throat tightened. It wasn't like that. I didn't realize who you were. Maya's expression didn't change. You shouldn't have to realize who I am to treat me with respect. He flinched. Around them, the other employees exchanged looks, their unease palpable. Trevon paused his work completely, eyes fixed on the confrontation. Maya took a small step closer. Her voice was still calm, but quieter now, more precise, cutting through the air like a scalpel. When you looked at me yesterday, Mr. Harper, what did you see? Greg swallowed. I saw the customer, maybe a walk-in. A walk-in, she echoed. Not a professional woman. Not someone with a reservation. Not someone deserving of a seat. Just a walk-in. Her tone was calm, but her words dripped with truth that couldn't be denied. Greg looked down, voice trembling. I didn't mean to offend you, Miss Bennett. She paused. But you did. The simplicity of the statement hit harder than any shout could have. Emily couldn't stand still anymore. She stepped forward hesitantly. Ma'am, if I may, I saw everything yesterday. You were treated unfairly, and I'm sorry. I should have said something. Maya turned to her gently. It takes courage to speak up, Miss Harris. Thank you. Emily's shoulders relaxed a little, though guilt still clouded her eyes. Maya looked back at Greg. You've been managing this location for 7 years. Tell me, in all that time, how many black employees have you hired? Greg blinked. I don't keep track of that kind of thing. Maya's expression sharpened slightly. You don't need to keep track. You just need to look around. The silence said enough. Only Trevon, standing behind the counter, represented color in the room. Everyone else, from the kitchen staff to the servers, looked the same. Maya gestured toward him. Mr. Parks, how long have you been here? 2 years, ma'am, Trevon replied quietly. Anyone else of color on staff? He shook his head. Just me. She nodded slowly. Thank you. Then to Greg. 2 years, 1 employee, a single thread of diversity in a room full of opportunity. How do you explain that? He stammered. We hire based on qualifications. Do you? She asked, cutting him off. Or do you hire based on comfort? Her words echoed. Even the hum of the ceiling fan seemed to pause. Greg's voice cracked. You're making this sound like something it's not. I treat everyone the same. Maya's eyes glinted with something between sadness and resolve. That's the problem. You treat everyone the same, but you see them differently. He tried to speak again, but the words fell apart before they reached his lips. She leaned slightly closer. You think racism only looks like shouting slurs or violence? No. Sometimes it looks like a smile that hides judgment, a tone that dismisses, a door that quietly stays closed. The color drained from Greg's face. At that moment, one of Maya's associates, Miss Turner, approached, holding a printed report. She whispered something to Maya, who read the page silently. Then she laid it flat on the counter in front of Greg. These are your staff records, Maya said, and your complaint logs. 6 formal discrimination complaints filed over the past 3 years. Every one of them marked unsubstantiated. Greg stammered. Those were misunderstandings. People overreacting. Maya's voice cut through, sharper now. Overreacting to what, exactly? To being spoken down to, ignored, passed over for promotions, or to being told they don't fit your brand? He said nothing. Maya stepped back slightly, drawing a breath. This isn't just about yesterday. It's about a pattern. a culture you built here. One that tells people who look like me that they're good enough to serve food, but not to eat it. The room went still again. Even the customers seated nearby, now quiet, watching, could feel the shift in power, the unraveling of an image Greg had clung to for years. Finally, she reached into her folder and removed a sealed envelope. She placed it on the counter. "Effective immediately," she said. "You are suspended from management duties pending termination review." Greg blinked, disbelief etched across his face. "You can't." "I can," she replied softly, "and I just did." He stared at her, chest rising and falling rapidly. "Please, Ms. Bennett, I built this place. It's my life." Maya's voice softened, but her resolve didn't waver. "Maybe it's time you learn that building something isn't the same as owning the people inside it." She turned to Emily. "You'll continue as acting floor manager until further notice. Corporate will assign a new general manager within the week." Emily's eyes widened. "Me?" Maya nodded with a small, kind smile. "You showed integrity when it mattered most, even if it was late. That counts for something." Then to Trevin, "Your record here is spotless. You'll be assisting with training and inclusion policy reviews going forward. I'll personally make sure your contributions are recognized." Trevin blinked, caught between shock and gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am." Maya gave a single nod, then turned back to Greg one last time. "You said yesterday this place had a certain kind of crowd." Her voice was calm but firm. "Starting tomorrow, that crowd changes." Greg stood frozen as she walked out, the silver doorbell chiming faintly behind her. Outside, rain still drizzled, light, cleansing, steady. Maya paused on the sidewalk, lifting her face to the gray sky for a moment before getting into her car. She didn't feel victorious. She felt tired, but peaceful. Every act of resistance, no matter how quiet, took something from her. But it gave something back to the world. Inside the bistro, Emily stood tall for the first time in months. Trevin smiled faintly, exhaling a long, quiet breath of relief. And Greg Harper? He sank into the nearest chair, head in his hands, surrounded by the silence of a restaurant that no longer belonged to him. The restaurant felt different now. The air wasn't just heavy, it was charged. Like the moment before a thunderstorm, when you could smell the rain before it fell. Maya Bennett stood near the counter, still and silent. The woman who had entered the restaurant as an unassuming customer now commanded the room with quiet authority. Her tailored coat hung from her shoulders like armor, and the weight of years of unspoken prejudice sat just behind her calm brown eyes. Across from her, Greg Thompson hovered near the espresso machine, pretending to tidy the counter. His hands shook. His voice, once sharp and mocking, was gone. Every so often, his eyes flicked toward Maya, then away again. The tension hadn't faded since the customers left. It had only grown thicker, invisible but suffocating. At one of the back tables, Lena Torres was stacking napkins just to have something to do. She'd seen everything that day. The tone, the sneer, the way Greg had made Maya feel small. Lena had seen it before too. Not always this blatant, but always there. She thought about the time Greg told her to smile more for customers. "You people look angry when you don't." The words had burned back then, but she'd swallowed them because she needed the job. But now, watching Maya stand there with such dignity, something in Lena began to shift. Maya turned toward Greg. "You still haven't looked me in the eye, Mr. Thompson." Greg froze. I don't know what you mean." "You do," Maya said softly. Her voice wasn't angry. It was steady, measured, the voice of someone who'd been through this before. Too many times. It's the same look I've seen in boardrooms, on sidewalks, in stores. That look that says, You don't belong here. You've used it your whole life, haven't you? Greg frowned, defensive. Now hold on. I treat everyone the same. You're making this about race when it's not. Maya took a slow step toward him. Then explain why every single customer who came in after me, all white, got seated immediately. Why your tone changed the second you saw my face. Why your so-called policy suddenly mattered when it was me. He opened his mouth, but the words refused to come. His jaw twitched. Because you saw me and you made a decision, Maya continued. Not based on who I am, but on what I look like. And the worst part? She leaned closer. You thought you were right. Greg's voice cracked. You're twisting this. I was doing my job. Lena flinched from the counter, the rag still in her hand. Greg, she said quietly, you told me to ignore her. You said, don't waste a table on her type. Greg's head whipped around. Lena, don't. But it was too late. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Maya blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. Her type, she repeated softly. What type is that, Mr. Thompson? Greg's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He stared at the floor, his face a mixture of fear and shame. Lena looked between them, her chest tight. She'd never spoken against Greg before. She could already imagine the fallout, the whispering, the retaliation if Maya weren't who she was. But something told her that silence, this time, would cost her soul more than her job. Maya took a breath, steadying herself. You know, she said quietly, when I was 19, I worked in a place just like this. The manager there told me customers preferred to be served by someone who looked cleaner. I remember thinking maybe if I smiled more, worked harder, dressed better, maybe I could make them see me differently. Her voice trembled for the first time, a flicker of pain breaking through her calm. But I learned something, Greg. You can't make people see you as human if they've already decided you're not. Greg's eyes darted up. I didn't mean to. You did mean it, Maya said, cutting him off, her tone sharp now. That's what makes it dangerous. For a moment, silence filled the room again. Only the sound of the refrigerator motor hummed in the background, steady as a heartbeat. Then, Maya turned toward Lena. Lena, thank you for being honest. Please get Daniel Pierce from HR on the line. Lena nodded quickly, relief and nerves mixing in her chest as she disappeared into the back office. Greg's panic began to surface. Look, you don't understand. I've worked here for 15 years. I've done everything for this place. One mistake, and you're gonna ruin me? Maya raised an eyebrow. One mistake? She echoed. Greg, this wasn't a mistake. This was a mindset. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You're really gonna do this? Over what? Some misunderstanding? You people always... He stopped, realizing what he just said. The words were out before he could catch them. Maya's eyes widened slightly, not in shock, but in recognition. It was the confirmation of everything she'd known since the moment she walked in. She didn't move, didn't speak for several seconds. When she finally did, her voice was cold, final. Say that again. Greg's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't mean... No, Greg, Maya said, stepping forward. You meant it. That's who you are when no one's watching. That's what your apology really sounds like. The door opened, and Daniel Pierce, 38, white, entered, his expression cautious. He was the kind of man who'd seen too many HR complaints brushed under the rug. But when his eyes met Maya's, he straightened. Maya, he said quietly, I came as fast as I could. Maya gestured toward Greg. Mr. Thompson has demonstrated conduct that violates both company policy and basic human decency. His employment is terminated effective immediately. Greg's face drained of color. You can't! You're not serious! Daniel looked at Maya, then at Greg. You're lucky she's handling this. Anyone else, and this would already be a lawsuit. Greg's breath came fast. You're ruining my life over a misunderstanding. Maya's voice broke through like a blade through fog. You ruined your own life the moment you decided that someone's worth could be measured by their skin. Her words cut clean, not cruelly, but with truth. Greg stood frozen, then shoved past Daniel and stormed toward the exit. The door slammed behind him, the bell jingling weakly in the silence that followed. Lena emerged from the office, her eyes wide, her face pale. Is it over? Maya exhaled slowly, the strength in her posture finally giving way to fatigue. No, Lena, it's not over. This doesn't end with one man. It ends when people stop pretending this kind of thing doesn't happen. Lena nodded, her throat tight. I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. Maya offered a small, tired smile. You spoke when it mattered most. That's how change begins. She turned toward Daniel. I want diversity and ethics training for every employee within 72 hours. And I want an anonymous reporting system installed. If there are more like Greg, I intend to find them. Daniel nodded, scribbling notes, humbled by the authority in her voice. As the three of them stood in that quiet restaurant, the sun dipped below the city skyline, streaking the windows with a red-gold glow. The place that had been filled with ignorance hours ago now felt different. Not cleansed, but changed. Maya walked to the door and looked out at the street. People passed by, laughing, talking, unaware of what had just happened behind those glass panes. But for her, it wasn't just another day. It was a battle she'd fought 100 times before, and would likely fight again. She whispered to herself, maybe one day we won't have to prove we belong. Then she pushed open the door, stepped into the fading light, and walked away, leaving behind not just a restaurant, but a message. Racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers in policy, in tone, in a look. But when someone finally calls it by its name, the silence that follows is the first sound of change. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass windows of Harper & Sons Bistro, cutting soft golden lines across the polished floors. The same light that had shone on yesterday's chaos now landed on an empty room that felt different, cleansed, but scarred. The smell of coffee was faint, and the usual breakfast chatter was absent. The place had never felt so quiet. Maya Bennett stood in the center of the dining area, hands folded loosely in front of her, calm, collected. Her dark blazer freshly pressed, looked over the restaurant with a faint sadness that no one else would have noticed. She had slept little. The previous night's confrontation had played again and again in her mind, not as a victory, but as a reminder of how deep the problem ran. The silence was broken by the soft click of heels. Weena Torres, 28, Latina, entered, holding a folder of notes and a cup of black coffee. She looked nervous but determined. "Morning, Miss Bennett," she said. Maya turned and smiled, faintly. "Good morning, Lena." Lena hesitated, glancing around. "It's strange. Feels like a different place." Maya nodded slowly. "It should feel different. Change has a sound. Silence before the noise of something new." They stood together for a moment, listening to that silence. Then Maya took a deep breath. "How's the staff?" "They're shaken," Lena admitted. "Some think you did the right thing. Others say Greg didn't deserve to be fired. You know how people talk. Maya looked out the window. They always talk louder when the truth makes them uncomfortable. Lena lowered her voice. I heard one of the line cooks say that you only fired Greg because of race. Maya smiled sadly. That's the irony, isn't it? They never see racism when it hurts you, only when it costs one of their own. Lena bit her lip, unsure how to respond. Maya didn't look angry, just tired. But that's why we're here today, to show them what accountability looks like, to rebuild this place, not from fear, but from respect. She turned toward the counter and began rearranging the decor, almost absent-mindedly. Every morning after something ugly happens, people want to go back to normal. But I don't want normal, Lena. Normal is what let Greg act like that. Lena nodded. What do you want instead? Better, Maya said simply. I want better. The door opened, and Daniel Pierce stepped in, holding a stack of HR forms. He looked exhausted, but respectful. Morning, he said quietly. Morning, Daniel, Maya replied. Any word from corporate? He exhaled. Plenty. Half the executives think you overreacted. The other half are scared to disagree publicly. Some are already whispering about press leaks. Maya tilted her head. And what do you think? Daniel hesitated, then spoke carefully. I think what you did was right. But right doesn't always mean easy. You know that better than anyone. Maya gave a small nod. Truth rarely is. He set the papers on the counter. We'll need an official statement by noon. I'll help draft it. Make it simple, she said. Tell them the company stands for equality, not as a slogan, but as a promise we're still learning to keep. Daniel looked at her with something close to admiration. You really think this will change anything? Maya looked around the restaurant again. Change doesn't start big, Daniel. It starts right here, in rooms like this, with people who are finally ready to listen. Lena poured herself coffee and asked quietly, Do you think Greg will be okay? The question hung in the air like dust in sunlight. Maya didn't answer right away. She thought of Greg, the way he'd stormed out, pale and furious, his pride collapsing under truth he refused to face. She thought of the years of quiet discrimination he justified as policy. I don't know, she said softly, but maybe now he'll have to face himself. That's the hardest kind of punishment. Outside, the morning traffic grew louder, the city waking up. Maya turned toward the windows, watching people pass by, faces of every color, rushing toward their own worlds. Lena, she said suddenly, what do you see when you look out there? Lena followed her gaze. People. Just people. Exactly, Maya said. That's all I ever wanted Greg to see. A beat of silence passed between them. Then Maya smiled faintly. Come on, we've got work to do. They spent the next few hours meeting with staff. Not lecturing, not scolding, but talking. Maya listened to fears, to anger, to ignorance disguised as confusion. Some apologized for not stepping in. Others defended Greg out of misplaced loyalty. Maya let them speak. She believed that silence built walls, but listening, even to the ugly parts, could break them down. By noon, the tension had shifted. Not gone, but softer. People began to understand that what happened yesterday wasn't about a single man. It was about all the little moments that allowed him to believe his behavior was acceptable. As the staff left the meeting, Maya stayed behind. She stood near the booth where it had all started. For the first time, it didn't feel like a battlefield. Daniel approached her quietly. You did good today, he said. Maya smiled faintly. Good isn't enough, but it's a start. He nodded. You know, I used to think racism was something you could fix with rules, policy, training. But it's not, is it? No, Maya said. It's something you fix by looking people in the eye and asking them to see what they've refused to see. He looked at her for a long moment. Do you ever get tired of fighting? Every day, Maya said honestly. But if I stop, who wins? Daniel nodded slowly. Then I guess we keep fighting. Maya looked toward the sunlight streaming through the window, warming the old wood of the table. That's the thing about light, she said softly. It always finds a way in. Outside, a small group of customers waited for the doors to open. One of them, a young black mother with her daughter, smiled through the glass at Maya. Maya smiled back. Lena came to unlock the door. Ready? Maya nodded. Ready. The door swung open, letting in the hum of the city, the sound of life continuing. As the customers entered, the restaurant began to feel alive again. Not perfect, not pure, but alive. Maya moved among them quietly, watching as the staff greeted each person with new eyes. She caught a glimpse of Lena, guiding the young girl to a booth with genuine kindness. It was a small moment, easy to miss, but Maya saw it, the ripple she had hoped for. And for the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. That night, Maya stood in her office, looking out at the city lights. The sky was deep violet, and the streets glowed with the rhythm of a world too big to fix all at once. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe change wasn't about conquering the world. It was about shifting one small corner of it, one person at a time. She thought of Greg, angry, humiliated, somewhere out there facing himself for the first time. She didn't hate him. Pity, maybe. But more than that, she hoped he would learn. She thought of Lena, finding courage to speak up, of Daniel, learning that policy could have a heart, and she thought of that little girl in the restaurant, smiling like she'd never been told she didn't belong. Maya whispered to the empty room, "That's enough for today." Then she turned off the lights, stepped into the elevator, and disappeared into the night, not as a CEO, not as a symbol, but as a woman who had dared to demand better from the world and who refused to stop until it listened.